Okay, let's talk a little bit about voltaic cells. These are cells where the redox reaction involved is spontaneous, therefore can perform electrical work. They're also called galvanic cells, and then we force that electricity produced from the spontaneous redox reaction through an external circuit, allowing it to perform work. The voltaic cells, again, are spontaneous. So let's say you put a strip of zinc in a copper solution. The copper is going to deposit on the zinc. And the zinc dissolves by forming zinc 2 plus. Zinc could then be spontaneously oxidized to zinc by the copper 2 plus ions. And the copper 2 plus ions are spontaneously reduced to copper 0 or metallic copper by the zinc. The entire process is spontaneous, but if I harness that via an external circuit, I can get a current that produces useful work. And so instead of being in direct contact, they're connected by the external circuit where we have a voltmeter, and there's a piece in the middle called a salt bridge. And so the spontaneous redox does occur where the zinc is oxidized and the copper is reduced, but then the current starts on the zinc electrode, which is negative, travels via the voltmeter through the external circuit at a voltage of 1.1 volts for this particular cell, and then continues through to the positive electrode, which is the metallic copper. So notice, and this is pretty universal, that oxidation occurs at the anode and reduction occurs at the cathode. For a voltaic cell or galvanic cell, that anode carries a negative charge because electrons are produced there. They travel towards the cathode, which for a galvanic or voltaic cell is positive, where the reduction occurs. To complete the circuit, you need that salt bridge in the middle, and it contains something called agar, and essentially it's derived from seaweed. It forms a gel, it's a clear gel. You dissolve it in hot water with a salt, in our case, potassium chloride, that allows ions to exchange between compartments and keep them electrically neutral. That agar traps the salt and allows the ions to transfer. It's similar in texture to, say, Jello or something, except this is plant derived, unlike Jello, and it will actually maintain the gel at room temperature, which Jello does not. You have to refrigerate it. And so the anode consists of the zinc oxidation. The cathode consists of the copper reduction. Again, the salt bridge is used to complete the external circuit where the cations move from cathode to anode and anions move from cathode to anode, maintaining the electrical neutrality of the solution. The metals are the actual electrodes. That is the zinc metal or the copper metal or the actual electrodes. You can do an inert electrode like graphite, for example, or platinum, but that's not necessary in this case. Usually that's done when it's inconvenient to have an electrode made out of the metal. So the zinc in the anode is converted to zinc 2 plus into electrons. Those electrons flow via the external circuit to the cathode where those very same electrons are used in the reduction. So we'd expect the zinc electrode to lose mass, the copper electrode to gain mass. So here are the rules of voltaic cells. On the anode, the electrons are products. The cathode, the electrons are reactants. And the electrons can't swim. That is, they can't go through the solution from one electrode to the other. They have to travel via the external circuit. And therefore, the anode is negative, the cathode is positive because the electrons are generated on the anode and they are used up on the cathode. They don't flow through the solution or go through the external circuit, which was rule 3. You don't have to have a salt bridge if you have a semi-permeable barrier. And the membrane that produces that barrier allows the anions to go into the anode department and the cations to go into the cathode department to even out the charge, which does the job of the salt bridge, although getting a membrane to do the job on a lab scale thing like in our lab is a little bit more difficult, but it's commonly used in batteries. But other than that, it does work out very similarly. And you'd get the same voltage. So cations and anions move through the porous barrier in this case, or the salt bridge as in the previous case. The cations are moving to the cathode department to neutralize excess negatively charged ions produced because the cation's been used up in the reduction. And the anions are moving the anode department to neutralize the excess zinc that's being formed by the oxidation. So spontaneous redox reactions such as that between zinc and copper 2 plus, you're going to get an oxidation of the zinc, a reduction of the copper. On an atomic level, the copper ion comes into contact with a zinc atom if they're in the same compartment, allowing that redox to occur directly, or the electrons travel via the circuit and cause it to occur indirectly. And so electrochemical cell would be abbreviated this way, where the anode is on the left, the cathode's on the right. And so the first thing listed is the zinc metal. So that first thing is the anode, the actual, what the electrode's made out of. And then the ion in solution, the oxidized form. If there's an inert electrode, there may be another line in, say, graphite or something over here. The double line separates the two cell compartments. Then you've got the ion that's in the cathode solution that's involved in the redox, and then the reduced form, which is actually our electrode in this case. So we have everything on the anode to the left, and everything on the cathode to the right, and everything separated by one or two vertical lines. So if we change it, and here we've got copper oxidizing and silver being reduced, what would be the cell notation? So if we want to look at that, so this is our reduction. So that's the cathode. The copper being oxidized in this case is the anode. So we're going to say Cu solid line Cu2 plus, that's the ion produced, aqueous, double line to separate the two halves of the cell. Then we're going to have Ag plus aqueous. Don't worry about the stoichiometry for the purposes of the notation. And then silver metal. And so that would be a proper cell notation for that particular reaction.